Good morning to those of you that just joined us. It's about 8 o'clock here. We're going to get started in just a minute or so. We're letting a few other people into the waiting room. So we're going to give just another minute or two till we kick off. So if you're just joining us from the waiting room as a attendee, thank you for coming. And we're going to kick things off in just about 2 minutes. So hang tight. We'll be right with you. All right, I think we'll get things started here. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tommy Johnson, and I'm with the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's Eaton Peabody's Growth Basics for Business. This is our monthly breakfast seminar series, which provides a forum to gain useful, do-it-yourself workplace solutions and insightful, actionable tips. Along with Eaton Peabody, I must also thank our virtual sponsor, Anania Bailey, for allowing us to bring this event to you virtually for the entire season. Now, I'd like to welcome you all to this latest installment of Growth Basics for Business calendar year 21-22. This 10-part season-long series runs from September through June. Today's topic, retirement plan compliance, what small businesses need to know, is presented by a trio of experts in the field. They bring dozens of years of experience to this important topic. And I want to point out that this topic continues another great season of topics, a testament to the diverse and wider range of topics we've presented all season long. Now, like all the Chamber's virtual signature events, today's presentation is free and will be recorded and made available for free replay on the Chamber's website and YouTube page. To keep up to date on all the Chamber news and events, please visit our website, portlandregion.com, check out our events page, and sign up for our weekly email newsletter while you're there. Now, before we get to today's presentation, I would like to remind you that if you have questions for our presenters, please type them in the Zoom chat, and I'll relay them to our presenters throughout the event. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge our presenting sponsor of Growth Basics for Business, Eaton Peabody. For the past 3 years, Eaton Peabody had been the exclusive sponsor of this series, and they continue their support again this season. Normally, I would take this opportunity to thank Nate if we were in person for the wonderful array of breakfast treats that he puts out, but in this virtual format, I'll have to leave it up to you all to nosh on whatever you've got in front of you there. But at this point, Nate Levesque, I'd love you to say a few words. Nate, good morning.
Thank you, Tommy. I can't believe that we're nearing the end of the 4th season already. I want to thank the Portland Chamber for doing such a great job of putting these together, providing new and engaging content month after month. I also want to thank our presenters for joining us today. I look forward to these events every single month, and I'm really excited about this great presentation today. So whether this is your first Growth Basics event or your 10th, I also want to thank you for joining us today and taking the time. For those of you that may not be familiar with our firm, we are a full-service, Maine-based law firm with nearly 50 attorneys serving Maine clients from offices in Augusta, Bangor, Brunswick, Ellsworth, and Portland. We assist companies of all sizes in a variety of industries. So whether you're an established financial institution or a small business just taking your first steps, we can help with all of your legal needs. To learn more about the services that we provide and the industries that we serve, please visit our website, eatonpeabody.com. Also, be sure to follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn to stay up to date on our legal updates and other future presentations. Back to you, Tommy.
Thanks, Nate. And at this point, I'll get right into the presentation. I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel of presenters. With us today are Jack Bjorn, associate with Eaton Peabody, Employee Benefits Practice Group. He earned his JD from the University of New Hampshire, my alma mater. Also joining our panel of presenters is Nate Moody, retirement advisor with LaBelle and Harriman. Nate is an experienced retirement plan consultant and financial advisor with expertise in driving participant outcomes and minimizing fiduciary liability. Finally, we welcome Bill Ank, principal with Barry Dunn, Employee Benefits Tax Group. He has an extensive experience working with for-profit and not-for-profit organizations to help them understand the intricacies of retirement plan selection, design, monitoring, and problem resolution. Certainly a credentialed group. Take it away, gentlemen.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Tommy. And thank you everybody for joining us this morning. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So really the biggest reason of why we're here today is a piece of legislation that was passed about June of last year that takes effect, or is supposed to take effect this time actually next year. It's around April 2023. That was a state level legislation that's going to require that employers of certain sizes offer a retirement plan to their employees. And if they don't, they're going to have to enroll them in what's going to be a newly formed Maine State Retirement Savings Program, a little bit different than their pension program. This would be on sort of the private sector side. But that's sort of the overarching reason of why we're here today. But we thought, in addition to sort of helping to educate you on what that legislation looks like, what it says, we'd also provide a little bit of context on sort of what the retirement plan landscape looks like in Maine today, and certainly some alternative options for those employers that maybe didn't want to utilize the Maine State program, and what those options are and what sort of the pros and cons to each is. So I think you've already had a chance to meet all of us, so I will skip over that. Again, what we'll cover today is going to be a quick backdrop on the retirement plan landscape here in Maine. We're going to go through that Maine Retirement Savings Program legislation, sort of what we know so far and what is still outstanding. Finally, we're going to talk a little bit about alternative retirement plan options. You might have heard of a 401k, 403b, simple IRA. We're going to go through those, and then finally, quickly touch upon the benefits of a retirement plan. So jumping right into sort of the current landscape, just a couple sort of quick stats to throw at you early this morning. So last November, a record number, 4.5 million people voluntarily resigned. 85% of workers are currently citing, financial stress or being anxious about their current financial situation. And we have 55 million workers that don't currently have access to a retirement plan. And you might say, Nate, I don't get how all these numbers connect. So we have a ton of people who are voluntarily leaving their job. We have a ton of people who are stressed about their finances. And we have a ton of people who don't have access to a retirement plan at work. And really, this presentation sort of lives at the intersection of all of these. A retirement plan certainly can help those employers lower their turnover, can help to attract and retain talent. I know we say that all the time, but it does truly move the needle. And one of the biggest things is, in addition to lowering your turnover, is you're helping your people become more productive at work. Because by giving them a retirement plan and allowing them to save for retirement, they're no longer as stressed and thus, more productive. They're not letting their thoughts wander quite as much. And then finally, this idea of this coverage gap, which is, all these folks that don't have access to a retirement plan. And we're going to talk about why that's such a big deal in just a second. And you'll see that stat there in the bottom right. And actually, I'll show this graph here. The difference in the amount of confidence people have in their financial picture for retirement when they have access to a retirement plan versus when they don't have access to a retirement plan. So on the left-hand side of this chart, you'll see over the last 5 years or so, how many folks that were surveyed are confident or somewhat confident in their sort of retirement savings. And you'll see it's about, for 2021, about 78%. On the right-hand most side, you'll see for those folks that do not have access to a retirement plan. And you'll see actually 58% of people who do not have access to a retirement plan through work are also not confident in what their retirement is going to look like. Whereas on the left-hand side of 2021, only 21% who have access to a retirement plan are not confident. So those are pretty stark differences. Almost 3 times as many people are not confident in what their retirement is going to look like when they don't have access to a retirement plan. So let's take a look quickly at the Maine's retirement landscape. How many people in Maine don't have access to a retirement plan? And again, I'm sort of setting this up because this is really what this legislation is designed to help address, is this coverage gap. And we see here that almost half of all private sector employees in the state of Maine do not have access to a retirement plan. About 207,000 workers here in Maine. So again, 3 times as likely to be, not confident in what your retirement savings might look like or retirement picture might look like if you don't have access. And almost half of all Maine workers, private sector workers, don't have access to a plan. So let's take a look at how much of those are represented by sort of large employers versus small employers. And this chart here shows that about 55% of those people that don't have access to a retirement plan through work for companies that have 25 or less employees. And again, that's sort of those are key numbers right there, because when we talk about this legislation, that's where it's going to get phased in, is for employers with 25 or more, and then it's slowly going to phase out over time. Phase in over time. And we also see that here in Maine, unfortunately, about 1 in 5 Mainers rely on Social Security for 90% of their retirement income. So again, I know most people are familiar. There's this huge retirement savings crisis and gap that we're trying to address in Maine, especially. Again, 1 in 5 Mainers, elderly Mainers, live almost exclusively on Social Security income. And for anybody that's not familiar, Social Security was never designed to be a 100% replacement of your income in retirement. And if you look at what it is, especially after your Medicare premiums and whatnot, I would argue it's really not enough to live on. And the fact that 1 in 5 Mainers, and that number is actually increasing every single year, rely almost solely on Social Security. So we have a couple problems here, right? We have a problem with not enough people having access to retirement plans and not enough people saving for retirement. So I'm going to hand it off to Jack, who's going to go through what we know and what we don't know about the Maine Retirement Savings Program. Jack, take it from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Nate. And thank you to the Portland Chamber for having us today. Again, my name is Jack Bajorn. I'm an associate attorney in the Eaton Peabody Employee Benefits Practice Group in Portland. We wanted to share a little more about this act and the Maine-based retirement program with the foundation and an IRA that came about last year and has kind of flown under the radar a little ever since then. The act, as Nate said, does not create the program, or does not start the program until next year, but currently we're in the workings to set up the program, provide funding for it, and hopefully through this event this morning, provide employers with a little more awareness of it as well. So just to start things off, historically, neither ERISA nor the IRS have required that employers sponsor a retirement program. Passed last June in Maine, an act to promote the individual savings accounts through a public-private partnership will require that covered employers automatically enroll employees into the newly formed Maine Retirement Savings Program. So covered employees essentially includes private entities, both for-profit and not-for-profit, that employ 5 or more employees and that do not otherwise sponsor its own retirement plan. Those employees may include part-time, seasonal, or temporary workers, but that part is to be determined by the Maine Retirement Savings Board itself, or as I'll refer to them, the board. A lot is yet to be figured out about this act, which is one of the more frustrating things I would say so far. I am hopeful that in the next few months we'll know a lot more as more is established and the board is established and the board starts setting the rules and procedures for the plan. But what we know so far is that the bill requires that covered employers automatically enroll employees at 5% of their pay into the state-run Roth IRA program with an opportunity to opt out. So a couple pieces there. The Roth IRA program would allow employees to, or would require employees to put away 5% of their after-tax savings into this Roth IRA account, so that in 10, 20, 30 years down the road, all of the earnings on that account will come out tax-free. This is intended, the whole program is intended to provide a safe, easy to understand way for Maine employees to start saving for retirement if they don't otherwise have a plan. Additionally, employers must automatically increase their employee savings by 1% annually up to an initial cap of 8%. This is one of those things that the Maine Retirement Savings Board, the board, has yet to figure out the details of. Importantly, employees will be required to opt out of the program every year. So if an employee chooses not to be in the program and not to put 5% of their savings up to 8% of their savings into this Roth IRA account, then those employees must every single year inform their employer that they will not be putting away that money. The mandatory program also has deadlines rolling out in various intervals. So those deadlines begin in next year. April 1 of 2023 shall require covered employers with 25 or more employees to start the program. On October 1st of 2023, it's employers with 15 to 24 covered employees. And beginning on April 1, 2024, the board shall require a covered employer with 5 to 14 covered employees to offer the program to all of its employees. With respect to compliance, as I've said, the bill establishes the Maine Retirement Savings Board to oversee the program. The board shall be made up of 9 voting members, the state treasurer, and 8 members appointed by the governor and approved by the legislature. The MSRB is charged with overseeing all aspects of the program, including investments, any service providers, the plan design, etc. So here, the board, which was supposed to have been set on April 1st of this year, or by April 1st of this year, with staggering terms. Each of those members will serve for four-year terms. And at the start of this program, that will be a little bit shorter for those that are appointed, so that we can adjust for the turnover over the next few years. Those board members will be required to establish the plan rules, contract with outside providers to ensure that the program is run smoothly and properly and for the best interest of all the participants that are in the program, similar to the fiduciary standard for other retirement savings plans. And the board will also be required to monitor and promote the program among the covered employees and employers in the state by providing required disclosures every year and doing an accounting of the plan each year as well. Additionally, there are annual penalties for non-compliance that start at $10 per employee and eventually increase up to $100 per employee by April 26 or 2026. These are designed, at least initially, to promote the program in a way that doesn't create a huge burden on the employers. And of course, there are carve-outs for employers that attempt to comply with the program in good faith, and a couple other exceptions as well. This program will not be considered an employer-sponsored retirement plan. And again, it's just for private sector employers, not for any state or federal employees as well. As excuse me, as I said, we still do not know a lot about this program. The Retirement Savings Fund that is established that will serve as the central hub of all of the retirement funds that go into this larger fund. Was supposed to have been established in February. Again, I still have not heard if that has taken place. We also don't know what investment options will be offered within the program or what the default investment options will be. The Act references target date funds, but also allows the board discretion to determine other kinds of funds and investment options as well, including employee-directed funds. But again, there's a lot to figure out with the service providers and the plan administrators there that will then have to keep track of all of the employee information and all of their investments as well. The Act also provides that the board shall determine and consider whether or not to allow traditional IRAs in addition to Roth IRAs. And again, the difference there is whether the money is being put into the IRA either before tax or after tax. And when you take out the money 10, 20, 30 years from now, whether you will be charged with paying taxes then or not. The Act also doesn't determine who will record keep the income limits applicable to IRAs. Again, the board is charged with hiring service providers and staff and contracting with all sorts of different individuals and also using, hopefully using current employer infrastructure to help make the program easy to use. But again, all those things have yet to be figured out. There is also a question of will there be guaranteed lifetime income features? There's still a lot to figure out about this Act, but hopefully we will know more in the coming months as the program is supposed to start next spring. And now, Bill, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jack, and welcome everyone. And so Nate mentioned as part of his introduction that there is this gap between employees who have access to a retirement plan and those who do not. And part of that gap may be due to those who don't offer a plan, their administrative costs related to sponsoring a plan, their contribution costs, and there's complexity. But really, employer-sponsored plans have been around for a long time, and Congress over time has really expanded the options that the newer programs available are simpler than what we would typically see as retirement plans. So I think there is an opportunity for employers who don't want to do this payroll-based program to actually adopt their own employer-sponsored plan. And I think studies have shown individuals who have access to an employer-sponsored plan are more likely to save for their retirement than those who do not. And as Nate pointed out in his slides, there is a gap between what people are saving for retirement and what they need for retirement. So the sooner individuals can save, the better. And so on the employer plan side, there are IRA-based plans, and then there are plans that have the contributions funded in a trust. And for the payroll-based plans, there are three types. And the payroll deduction IRA is really what the state of Maine is proposing employers adopt. The employer is really just a conduit to have employees deduct amounts from their paycheck and put them in an IRA. Simples allow employee deferrals. SEP IRAs are just employer funded, annual contributions, discretionary contributions, but no employee contributions. On the trust side, you have defined contribution plans, which is what most employers and employees are familiar with. And then you also have defined benefit plans. I won't spend a lot of time on defined benefit plans, but what I will say is defined benefit plans used to be the retirement plan of choice back, when I was a kid, which was a long time ago. And so, but things have changed, but there is still an environment where defined benefit plans make sense, where you have maybe owner-only companies and they're looking for significant tax deductions or significant retirement savings. As they get later in life, they've spent all their time developing their business, growing their business, and now they want to save for retirement. So what's the difference between an IRA-based plan and the trust-based plans? Well, the IRA-based plans are generally easier to administer. There are really no administrative costs, and there's no fiduciary liability. The trade-off is that there's very little design flexibility, and there's eligibility is really based on compensation versus hours worked. The trust-based, the defined contribution plans offer a lot more flexibility in plan design and contribution limits. However, they do add administrative costs each year. You generally need to hire a third-party administrator to help the company administer the plan. You will have investment advisors who help the employer select investments, review investments, and there's a lot more IRS oversight with the defined contribution plans. So as we look at this screen, there are a few areas I want to focus on where you can see the differences between the plans. And the first is on the employee contributions. SEPs do not allow any employee contributions. SEP IRA compared to a traditional 401k, you can see that the 401k limits are at least $6,000 higher than the simple IRA. And really the difference is you can just contribute, an employee can contribute a whole lot more. And for those age 50 or older, the contribution limits are significantly higher within the 401k plan. Somebody could get $27,000 away this year compared to $17,000 in the simple. However, the simple is relatively easy for an employer to administer. Then as you look at the contribution side, SEPs, again, complete employer contributions. The employer has complete flexibility to contribute anything from 0% up to 25% of eligible wages. But again, there's not a lot of design flexibility. So if the owner wants to receive a contribution equal to 15%, the employees are going to get a contribution equal to 15%. Simples has a much lower employer contribution requirement, but there's only a limited amount of contributions that can be made. It's either a 3% matching contribution or a 2% non-elective contribution. Non-elective meaning it goes to everybody, regardless of whether they contribute to the plan or not. Most simples I've seen are going with the matching contribution. And that follows the thought that employers want employees to save on their own. And so they'll use the matching contribution to incentivize employees to save on their own. The 401k plan allows discretionary contributions just like the SEP, allows a matching contribution just like the simple, and gives the employer much more flexibility on the level of matching contributions or discretionary contributions or a combination of both. And I will say, in general, the employer contributions within a 401k plan are probably in the 5 to 6% of wage range. And so the other difference between these three types of plans is eligibility. On the SEP side, you're really looking at employees who earn at least $650 a year. So again, it covers a broader base of employees. You can exclude employees who haven't had 3 years of service, but that years of service is based on earning at least $650. Simples increase the compensation limit, but again, it's purely compensation based. So the limit's $5,000. 401k plans, you can use a service-based, which is really an hours-based requirement, that employees have to work at least 1,000 hours to be able to join the plan. And you can have variances between requirements for making employee deferrals versus doing employer contributions. So again, a lot more design flexibility within the 401k plan. And lastly, SEPs and Simple's no vesting schedule. And vesting means if an employee leaves, are they entitled to the contributions the company makes on their behalf? SEPs and Simple's no vesting. So once the money goes into an employee's IRA, it's theirs. 401k plans can have a vesting schedule, which, some employers look at vesting as a retention tool. I don't know that it's as much a retention tool as much as it is a way for the employer to recoup some of the contributions it has made on an employee's behalf if they don't stay with the company long enough. And the last thing I'll mention on this slide, businesses under common control. If an individual owns 2 companies and they want to do a retirement plan for one company and not the other, that may be difficult to do. And we've seen situations where it's possible and others where it's not, but just something to keep in mind. So why would an employer sponsor a retirement plan? There are a number of reasons. And the first and foremost is to attract and retain employees. And there is a tax deduction. So any contributions the employer makes to a retirement plan is tax deductible. So that means, let's say the annual contribution is $10,000. Well, it's actually probably only going to cost the company, let's say $7,000 or $8,000, because they will get the tax deduction on income taxes. Also, you don't pay any payroll taxes on contribution. The employer does not pay any payroll tax on the contributions that go into a retirement plan. And then the contributions grow tax deferred. Employees, when they're allowed to contribute, have a choice between making their contributions pre-tax or after tax. I think the vast majority of employees still do it pre-tax, but the younger generation is much more apt to do Roth contributions and see the benefit of making after-tax contributions today with the possibility of tax-free distributions in the future. And finally, for those who don't have a plan already, there is a tax credit available for those who do not sponsor a plan and start a plan. And the credit is up to 50% of the eligible costs for the first 3 years of the plan. And I will say there's always tax legislation on the national level. And the House just passed what everybody's referring as the Secure Act 2.0. And it would actually increase the amount of this credit. So again, Congress recognizes people need to save, and they're incentivizing employers to sponsor a plan. And part of the proposal in Congress is also to provide a credit for actual employer contributions to the plan. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nate.
Thanks, Bill. And I'm glad you mentioned the Secure Act 2.0 because I think it is really important. And one thing I wanted just to jump back a couple slides here, if I can. So one big benefit to the traditional or to the 401k versus a simple IRA is the ability to contribute on a Roth basis and to contribute a significant amount of money on a Roth basis. However, there are some provisions in the Secure Act that was just recently passed by the House that would allow for simple IRA contribution, for Roth simple IRA contributions. So there's a ton of changes to the retirement plan landscape and sort of legislation bundled within that Secure Act 2.0, which kind of builds off a piece of legislation that was passed in 2019, which, as boring as retirement plan compliance is, retirement plan legislation is even more so. So I'll spare everybody on the call for now. But there are some really exciting, what I would argue are some really exciting changes coming up. And a lot of them are continuations of those same themes we've talked about. How do we encourage greater coverage of employees? Basically, how do we encourage employers to offer retirement plans for their employees? And part of that is expanding the tax credits available for employers that start a new plan. And then the other big piece is how do we encourage participation? And so there's another provision in that bill, Secure Act 2.0, that's going to require all new plans to also have automatic enrollment, automatic escalation. Because again, and we'll talk about this a little bit at the end, automatic features in retirement plans, basically the ability to automatically put people in. It's definitely a very behavioral finance based strategy, but the fact of the matter is it works because the default bias is very, very powerful and people tend to just sort of do whatever the easiest path is. So if you're going to automatically put me in the plan and I have to opt out, I'm probably going to stay in the plan. And more often than not, that's probably the best decision for me. And so we had talked about this mainstay program having those automatic features built into them. I would definitely say that that's the trend across the industry, is more towards those automatic sort of opt-out type features. And then the other point I wanted to make quickly was for anybody that's on the call that's worked for a not-for-profit or represents a not-for-profit, 403B plans, almost identical to the 401k plan column here, slightly different. There's a little bit less testing requirements on the employee level. And then the eligibility, technically it has to be immediate eligibility, but more or less a 403B plan, which is what's really specific to a not-for-profit, is going to be look and feel very similar to the 401k. It falls under the defined contribution umbrella, not under the IRA-based plans umbrella. So beyond just the tax benefits for sponsoring a plan, there's also this thought that you're trying to prepare for retirement, right? Especially as a business owner. And for whatever reason, there's a huge discrepancy between what you can contribute through an IRA or an IRA-based employer-sponsored plan versus a defined contribution, even really a defined benefit plan. But again, just focusing for today on defined contribution, 401k, 403b. And Bill touched upon this, and you can see for 2022, the individual limit for what somebody can put away towards their retirement in a 401k or 403b is $20,500. And then, if you're lucky enough to be age 50 or older, you can do an additional $6,500. So a grand total of $27,000, what you yourself are able to put away either pre-tax, which would lower, basically $27,000 worth of income you would not have to pay taxes on for that year, or Roth. So $27,000 that's going to grow tax-free from now until retirement. Whereas with an IRA, even a simple IRA, you can only do $17,000 total. And if you just do a straight IRA, which is what the main state retirement plan program is going to be, just your sort of typical individual IRA, that limit for someone age 50 or older is $7,000. So from $7,000 to $27,000, that's an additional $20,000 every year that you'd be able to sock away in an employer-sponsored 401k plan versus the state of Maine's IRA program. And that doesn't even include employer contributions. The Maine state program does not allow currently for any sort of employer contribution. So as a business owner, that's sort of where you can get kind of creative with sort of I hate to call it a double dip because that makes it seem like that you're doing something wrong, but the ability to put money away out of your own individual W-2 income, but then also having the employer, the business, put money away on your behalf and also taking that as a tax deductible expense. So let's look at what that difference means over time. So here we look at basically somebody who's saving from age 35 to 65 in either an IRA, and they're maxing out their contributions in an IRA every year for 30 years, versus maxing out their contributions, what they're allowed to do in a 401k. We just assume it grows at 6% per year. And you'll see why that makes such a difference using maybe the state of Maine program or just saving in an IRA versus saving in a 401k. And this really gets back to that original slide I showed of why people are so much less confident in what their retirement finances are going to look like when they have coverage, when they have access to a 401k plan versus when they don't. Because the proof is in the pudding, right? If you can only sock away $6,000 a year, it's just frankly not going to be enough to be able to live on in retirement. So having access to an employer-sponsored plan does truly allow you to put a significantly more amount of money into the plan each year, which then allows that to grow and to compound over time. And again, you can see almost 10 times as much sort of potential savings at retirement for maxing out the 401k versus maxing out just an IRA, individual retirement account. I know we use a lot of acronyms and whatnot in our industry. I feel bad. I'll try to do a better job spelling those out. And then, again, continuation of preparing for retirement. The state of Maine did a study that basically you should expect that the average Mainer needs about $48,000 of annual income in retirement to maintain their standard of living. And so we sort of backed into, you would need about $1 million of retirement savings at retirement in order to comfortably achieve that annual income amount. And again, this is not including Social Security. So we're really just focusing on what you yourself would have to save up. And I know people have their own thoughts about Social Security. I'm not going to go down that path. Let's just put it this way. I don't think it's going anywhere. It's a very important benefit, but if you are sort of cynical and you don't necessarily believe in the sustainability, solvency of Social Security, then, $1 million is sort of what you might need to expect to have at retirement in order to sort of achieve that continuation of your standard of living. Again, just based on sort of the average median wage in Maine. So in order to get to $1 million, you'd have to save about $9,000 per year. And again, I mentioned the IRA limit is only $6,000. So for you to try to be able to get enough to retire comfortably or really maintain your standard of living, an IRA, an individual retirement account, literally doesn't allow for enough contributions per year for you to ever even get to that mark. So now you have to put money away into an after-tax savings account, brokerage account, which aren't nearly as tax advantaged in order to try and have enough money socked away for retirement. So for any employer out there that hasn't sponsored a retirement plan, I would seriously encourage you to consider it, because the fact of the matter is your employees aren't going to be able to save enough for retirement just utilizing the individual retirement accounts that they have access to. And then finally, again, Bill mentioned this, recruiting and retention. I know they're kind of buzzwords thrown around the employee benefits space, but it's true. And we see here that, over half of employees join their current employer largely because it offered a retirement plan. People care about retirement benefits. It's one of the top employee benefits people ask for. I know recently a lot of the focus has been on, remote work, flexible work schedules, childcare, even probably student loan debt, increasingly so. But at the end of the day, people still really care about having access to a retirement plan and what, if any, contributions their employer makes on their behalf to help them prepare for retirement. And you can see that by over 3/4 of employees consider retirement plan as a must-have benefit. So for any employers that aren't offering a retirement plan currently, that's basically 3/4 of the potential workforce that are not even going to apply to an open position if they don't have access to a retirement plan. So you're eliminating a huge potential labor pool out there to try and draw talented workers from. 60% of Americans plan to work longer than expected to save for retirement. So again, from a workforce development standpoint, you have all these people when they're not ready to retire. What do? Do they just retire and live off Social Security? No, more often than not, they continue to work. And that can cause a bottleneck for companies when trying to promote or incentivize younger employees and give them sort of a career path, when you have sort of this whole cohort of people close to retirement or at retirement that literally can't financially retire because they just don't have enough money set aside. So be able to help people, save for retirement and retire on time can actually in turn help to sort of foster that kind of nice organic growth within the company. And then finally, we talk about the sort of the turnover, and that's where a lot of the expense is, right? Is hiring new people, training new people, right? Any small employer can attest it. It takes up a ton of time, resources, energy, money. And we find a 50% reduction in employee turnover following 1 year of employment and participation in the company's 401k plan. So once somebody starts participating in their company's retirement plan, they're much more likely to stay at that company, right? They have a vested interest in the future of that company, and the company in turn has a vested interest in the future of them. So that's all we had for this presentation. I want to just take a second to see if anybody wanted to submit some questions. There's certainly a couple other things we can touch upon since we do have some extra time. I know it's a lot for an 8 o'clock on a Tuesday. 401k plans aren't the sexiest topic out there, but we feel like this is a really important piece of legislation. It's going to cause some pretty big waves across the state of Maine, and I think Jack did a great job of talking about. There's still a lot of unknowns out there, and so it'll be interesting to see where all sort of those things lie or land. Excuse me, but any questions? Or Bill and Jack, anything that you want to add?
Well, so
I would just add that, there's no stupid questions. The retirement plans can be a difficult topic to understand, and a scary topic at that. Thinking about what you're going to do at retirement and how you're going to be able to afford your lifestyle is no walk in the park. But hopefully this retirement plan from the state or any of the other options that Bill and Nate have talked about will be able to help employees and employers share a little peace of mind for all of their employees across the state. The other thing I would just add from the program, the IRA program perspective, is that in addition to all of the details of how the program will function, the board has been charged with partnering with private entities to help educate employees across the state about this particular financial plan and about just planning for retirement in general, the risks and benefits associated with that, just financial literacy in general, which I know can be a difficult topic as well. So I think there are a lot of pros to this program outside of just helping individuals save for retirement, including a lot of the things that Bill and Nate have talked about today, and what are the best ways and what are the ways to ensure that you can live comfortably when it does come time to retire.
And with that, I want to add something that kind of dovetails what Nate talked about and what Jack just talked about. When I got into the retirement plan business, I did a lot of employee education and partnered with the investment advisor on the plan. And there are two things that struck me and have guided me through kind of my career now with respect to retirement savings that I told my kids and my kids' friends who are now in college and getting into the workforce. You can put, let's say, $3,000 away for 5 years starting at 18. Don't touch the money, invest it well. The nest egg you'll have by the time you're 65 is significant. The other thing that I found interesting as advisors were talking to the employees, somebody who starts young, right, get into the workforce, start saving, they stop, let's say at age 40, never contribute again. Then their coworkers start saving at 40, saves until they're 65. Who has more money? The individual who started at 25, who contributed less money, but it's the time value of money that individuals employees need to understand. And that's where partnering with advisors like Nate's company to help educate the employees, educate the employer on what's the best retirement plan program to reward and incentivize the employees.
And it does look like we have a question in the chat. I think Nate and Bill will best answer this one. I'm more of the compliance side. But Olivia had said, thank you so much. This has been so helpful. If you operated a small nonprofit with 6 to 7 full-time employees and don't currently have a retirement plan, what would your recommendations be for next steps to set up a plan?
Bill, you mind if I take that one?
No, and I'll add some commentary as well after you go.
Yeah, I would say, obviously I'm not going to give necessarily advice without a little bit more context. to Jack's compliance point. But I would say, nonprofits can be difficult in the sense that, you're really trying to squeeze every last dollar out of, what you're trying to get that mission to accomplish. And so more often than not, often with a smaller nonprofit, a simple IRA will typically make more sense. It's significantly less expensive, significantly less overhead. Typically nonprofits run pretty lean and mean, and more power to you for pulling that off. But that's what I would probably say. Certainly happy to help explore your options, kind of compare a 403B versus a simple IRA. But I would say, and Bill, feel free to chime in here, that a simple IRA typically will make more sense. And certainly what we often see too with smaller companies is starting with a simple IRA, letting that grow. And as the organization grows, at some point making a switch from a simple IRA to a 403B, and you are able to sort of roll those accounts over and kind of use that to seed the employer-sponsored 403B plan going forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Nate. I mean, on the not-for-profit side, I've seen a couple different approaches. Some go with, a 403B plan that only allows employee deferrals, low cost, low expense, but you're leaving your employees to determine where to put the money for the most part. And then maybe they'll complement that with a SEP IRA. But I do think that the simple is a great way to start a retirement program, minimal or reasonable employer contributions with allowing employees to save on their own. And there might be a little bit more involvement because generally you'll have an advisor like Nate's company in there to help educate the employees.
Any other questions on sort of what we covered today, or really just, if people have just more generic retirement planning type questions, feel free to fire them off. Can't promise we'll know all the answers, but certainly appreciate.
Yep. Oh yeah, Nate, sorry, Nate, didn't mean to interrupt you. I just want to say thank you to all you guys for a great presentation. Actually, Olivia sort of took my question that I had for you, and the Chamber of Commerce is a smallish nonprofit. We have 6 or 7 employees as well. We have over 1,300 members with the Chamber, and 85–90% of them are small businesses and or nonprofit organizations. So that question was perfect from Olivia. My question was going to be a little bit deeper in that, is there somewhere that somebody should start? Should they start with an accounting firm? Should they go right to a legal firm to find out what makes the most sense? Or should they start with an investment organization like yours, Nate? And without trying to plug each of your organizations too much, as you're navigating this roadmap as a small business or a nonprofit, what's the first step they should probably consider?
I would say really anywhere. I mean, I think all of us kind of, work together enough where we know when to sort of key in which kind of party for which question. I would say that often small businesses start with their accountant. It's typically kind of the one professional they really look to, especially as business owners, to help them with, their taxes every year. And a retirement plan is one of the best things a business can do to help, avoid or really lower their tax liability on a year-over-year basis. And so, certainly if you're lucky enough to work with a Bill at Barry Dunn, I think he would sort of be able to make that recommendation. And then at that point, I think a retirement plan advisor can help to sort of explore your options sort of going forward. And then once you get big enough where you get kind of subject to certain auditing rules and whatnot, certainly that's where, a Eaton Peabody and a risk attorney might come into play. But Bill, do you sort of agree?
Yeah, so we see it. We get the question a lot as you're doing an owner's tax return, or you're talking to the company and looking for tax deductions. And they've really, again, I've said this a couple times, Congress recognizes people need to save for retirement. So they've made it much more easier now for employers to adopt a plan after the end of the year, so that they can contribute an amount to the employees, and once they understand their tax situation for a given year. So we get the questions a lot, and the not-for-profit question, we get that quite a bit from our not-for-profit clients as they're growing. And what can we do? As Nate said, most employees are looking for a retirement plan, so they're trying to understand their options.
We did have another question pop up in the chat here. Ashley had said, any suggestions to help employees understand why they should take part in the employees plan? I have given all of the major talking points to them. I have had a simple IRA for my employees for almost 4 years, and it just doesn't seem like they're interested, and most don't take part. From my perspective, I'll just add that I think this is a common challenge, and one of those things that this program is intended to help with, just on the education side. It really is a matter of the employee's financial position as well, and how comfortable they are, what stage of their lives they're in, whether, there are huge advantages to investing early as you get those compounded effects. But when you're young and you're paying for an apartment and you're trying to save up for a house, there are all these other things that factor into what you're trying to do and how you're trying to save and be comfortable later in life. So that can be a huge challenge. But in terms of recommendations, I think, having annual discussions for this particular IRA program, there are annual opt-outs and annual requirements that will provide that employers do talk with employees and work with employees and the investment advisors to discuss what the advantages are to the lifetime savings of even up to $6,000 a year, which is no small amount of money. But working with Nate or Bill to discuss options on top of a simple IRA plan, those are that would be my recommendation to try and ensure that your employees are most secure when it comes time to retire later in life.
Yeah, I'll just add, we obviously do a lot of education meetings for our clients. And I would say really, especially with a simple IRA, because you don't have those automatic features, getting people to participate comes down to really two things. One is education. You just got to keep hitting them over the head with it. And I know it probably will get frustrating sometimes, but just don't lose faith. As soon as you say the right thing to the right person at the right time in their life, that's what will get them to start participating. And then incentives. So you mentioned a simple IRA, and Bill had talked about this. Simple IRAs have two different employer contribution formulas, either a 2% non-elective, everybody gets 2% of their pay every year that's eligible, or a 100% match up to 3%. So if you've been doing the 2%, I think that's great because it's putting money aside for those folks that might not be participating, but maybe you want to consider going to a match to sort of force people to put a little skin in the game and to incentivize them to say, hey, this is free money we're putting on the table. All you have to do is put a little bit towards your retirement and we're going to put that in. But again, I think it's really those two things, again, short of sort of automatically putting them into the plan, which you can't do with a simple IRA. Currently, you could do with a 401k. That's really what it comes down to, is just continuing to educate them. People have a really hard time valuing things that aren't tangible and that are very far off in the distance. And what's less tangible and far off in the distance than a retirement plan when you're in your 20s or 30s, right? You don't think you're ever going to get old. Speaking, I guess, from my own experience. And so it's how do you sort of get creative with helping people to understand that future benefit. And I think Bill had talked about a really great way to do that is that time value, because it's a lot more fun to spend money now than it is to save money now. But when you show them that every dollar you save today could be worth $3, $4, $5, $10 down the road, that's when people start to say, okay, yes, it hurts for me to put $1 away. Maybe I don't have Netflix and HBO and Hulu. I cut out a couple of these, but it means I'm going to have that much more in retirement. And you really put numbers to it that can help.
Yeah, again, I've seen working with an advisor who can show the time value of money, also putting it on paper, what is for them to see what is the net effect if they were to contribute to the retirement plan on a pre-tax basis, because there is tax savings by doing it pre-tax. So $100 a month isn't going to really impact their paycheck by $100. The other thing I've always been a believer in is start small. Each year, again, this is something I learned early in my career. Each year that you get a raise or an increase, don't take all of it in taxable income, increase your deferral percentage. You definitely take some with you to for after-tax money. But start slow, start small, slowly increase each year. And over time, I think they'll be surprised what they're contributing each year, but also what they have for savings. And again, I've said this, start young and stay with it.
I'll just one last quick point. Sorry, Tommy. I think one big thing to keep in mind too for those that are out there working with their employees and trying to help them save for retirement is to Jack's point, recognizing that we have college that's rising faster than the rate of inflation, healthcare rising faster than the rate of inflation, and actually Tommy and I were talking about this and Jack and Bill before. This is an intimidating topic, right? People are expected to save in HSAs, 529s, 401ks, IRAs, all these different things they're trying to save for, and they only get one paycheck. That money can only go so far, and their housing costs are increasing. The used car prices increase. I know this is like an ending with a doom and gloom situation, but it's so important that, employees are getting sort of the education and the assistance from their employer, who's often who they look to for help on, what to do with their money. How do they prioritize where to save? How can they decide or prioritize saving for retirement versus saving for their kids' college education, all these different things. So I just want to say that you're not alone, Ashley, in terms of your employees, struggling with how to make that decision, but there's certainly people out there that hopefully can help you with that message.
Well, gentlemen, great presentation. I really can't thank you enough for all the information you conveyed today, and all those of you who asked some great questions and participated today. I think I heard a couple of great things. Start young, start slow, and educate yourself. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here with today's presentation. Reminder that this presentation has been recorded and it will be available for replay on the Chamber's website and YouTube page. A copy of the presentation, additional details and resources will also be included in the post-event email that you'll receive after today. A quick plug for all the upcoming Chamber events. Be sure to visit our website and our calendar, check for all the great events, and even better, when you're there, sign up for our weekly newsletter. I want to thank everyone again for participating in this another great episode of Eaton Peabody's group, Growth Basics for Business, and to each of you for attending. Another shout out for our sponsors, Eaton Peabody and Anania Bailey, for their commitment to this series. We look forward to seeing you at our next Growth Basics for Business on Tuesday, May 17th, where we're going to hear from our partners at Townsquare Media on the topic of hiring strategies, how to utilize multimedia marketing to grow your team. Very important discussion these days when we seem to have more job opportunities than available workers. So with that said, have a wonderful day, stay dry, and enjoy the rest of your week.